I think one of the things that made it easier to talk about is people in my position maybe being more comfortable speaking about it. I think when you see people who have the perception of having it all under control, or having everything figured out, when they can admit their weaknesses, admit, they can struggle at certain parts of life, I think it makes it more acceptable for everybody else to be like, oh yeah, I'm struggling as well. I don't need to fake it anymore. And it's something I think it's been a great turning point in society. I think that people are more accepting of, challenges of mental health, people wanting to find different avenues to supplement their issues.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Matthew Chow, and I'm Chief Mental Health Officer at TELUS Health. I'm a physician specializing in mental health, and today I'm interviewing Brian White from the Vancouver Whitecaps Football Club. Brian, it's great to meet you today. Thank you so much for your generous offer to spend some time with me talking about mental health.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, so first off, maybe you can tell me what mental health means to you.
To me, mental health is, taking care of arguably one of the most important parts of yourself. I think, your mentality, your thoughts, your mood affect everything in your life, and I think it's important, especially in today's society, to know how to interpret your thoughts, your moods, how to, handle the ups and downs of life for sure.
I want to zone in on something you said right in the opener. You said it's one of the most important things, and so that's I have to admit that came as a surprise to me because you're an elite athlete, right? One of the best athletes in the world, and so I thought physicality, physical strength, speed, endurance, those would be like among the most important things. Yet you're mentioning that mental health is so important. Can you double down a little bit on that? Like why is this so important?
Yeah, I think it's, like I said, it's one of the most important things because you see it a lot, especially in sports, that players can have all the physical attributes, all the talents, but if mentally they're not invested in what they're doing, if their mind is elsewhere, if they're dealing with family, if they're depressed, like you could see, this is solely focused on the sporting side of it, but their level of play goes down, and it's has nothing to do with what they do taking care of their bodies. It's all everything they have to do taking care of their minds, and I think it's, and then it carries off the field, and your life, your relationships with friends, and that all kind of translates onto the field.
It's funny because in my work as a doctor, working with people that come to me with mental health challenges, burnout, depression, PTSD, that kind of stuff, what you just said rings really true, for sports, but also in other areas of life too. People talk about not performing as well at their work, not being able to concentrate at school. Kids tell me that they're finding it difficult to get through the day-to-day, because of anxiety or things like that. So it sounds like in the sporting world, just as it is in other aspects of life, mental health is so important. So what do you do to support mental health because it's so important?
For me, I've in the last couple of years, I've really looked at different avenues to kind of supplement my mental health. Started with COVID. I started seeing a psychologist at that point, a therapist. So I saw them pretty regularly, and then when we started playing again, just dealing with expectations, anxiety on the field, not wanting to miss chances, and sporting mental stuff, I started seeing a sports psychologist as well. And through those two avenues, working on mindfulness activities off the field, and I think they've really helped me on and off the field a whole lot.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that you said that at the beginning of COVID you started seeing a psychologist. I can tell you that even 10, 15 years ago, someone of your stature wouldn't tell that to me. That would be something that would be kind of like hush hush. People wouldn't talk about that stuff. They'd be worried about people judging them or criticizing them or feeling that some negativity towards someone that needs to see a psychologist. So what do you think's changed? What do you think has made it easier for people to talk about this kind of stuff?
I think one of the things that made it easier to talk about is people in my position maybe being more comfortable speaking about it. I think when you see people who have the perception of having it all under control, or having everything figured out, when they can admit their weaknesses, admit they can struggle at certain parts of life, I think it makes it more acceptable for everybody else to be like, oh yeah, I'm struggling as well. I don't need to fake it anymore. And it's something I think it's been a great turning point in society. I think that people are more accepting of, challenges of mental health, people wanting to find different avenues to supplement their issues.
Yeah. Well, you're part of that. So pat yourself on the back, right? When people like you talk openly about the fact that they've sought some support for mental health, it normalizes it.
Right.
It makes it okay for other people to do the same. And let me tell you, during the COVID pandemic, I was busy, as a mental health provider. We saw rates of people with mental health issues, rates of people needing help just skyrocket, and it's just never let up. It's so good for you for getting some support, and you're definitely not alone because a lot of people did the same. Let's zone in on the sports psychology part, because that's a specialized area of practice,
Right.
sports psychologist, and so you started seeing a sports psychologist. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, I think it started, when I came to the Whitecaps, I had a really good end of the year. I had 12 goals or something like that. And then the following year, dealt with a lot of injuries, wasn't scoring a lot, wasn't playing very well. And I kind of just let that simmer in my mind. I just was like, I don't want to be here. It was raining a lot. I was alone. Everything off the field was translating on the field. Everything on the field was translating off the field. And so coming into this year, I wanted to be more proactive in that realm in my mental health. So I reached out to the team's sports psychologist, Dr. Cox, and so I was working with him all year with, managing expectations, managing pressures and anxieties on the field, and I think it helped me a lot. It helped me perform well this year.
All right. Before we sat down together, we talked a little bit about the rain. Mm-hmm. So you're from a part of the world that doesn't rain quite as much as here in Vancouver, and I'm from the prairies where it mm-hmm. hardly rains at all. So got some commonality there. Tell me a little bit more about what the actual work is like with Dr. Cox, because I think there's a lot of folks out there that imagine, mental health and psychology and stuff is like sitting on a couch and you're like talking about your dreams or something, and mm-hmm. Someone's smoking, the psychiatrist smoking a pipe or something like that. Like, but what does it look like in reality? What is actually working with the psychologist look like?
Yeah, from my personal experience, we worked on, like I said, I was working on dealing with expectations, dealing with pressures that I would self-impose on myself. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you put, as an athlete, especially at a professional level, you want perfection, you want to be the best. And sometimes all that self-imposed pressure and anxiety create bad performances, bad play. And it's not that you're a bad player, it's just you're just not playing at your full potential. Everything's not in unison almost. So working with him, I was able to kind of analyze my thoughts, analyze the pressures I was putting on myself, work through them in a way that rationalize them. So like something that if I put pressure on myself to score a lot of goals, it's because I cared about it a lot. And if I just enjoy the moment, enjoy the process of getting to what I care about, there's no pressure, because it's just a matter of time before it starts to flow, till the goals start coming, kind of thing.
Yeah. It's funny. You're at least the second person that I've interviewed from the Whitecaps so far that's talked about the beauty and the joy of the day to day. So tell me about that. The like focusing on the day to day sometimes.
Yeah, it's part of the life of a professional player, and it can get kind of monotonous. Obviously, it's fun. You're playing the sport you love and everything, but it's raining, it's cold, it's wet. It's your 200th practice of the year. You're just running around, and it could get tired. Like it's not as glitz and glamorous as it seems to everyone, but it's it's what we love to do. And I think at times it can get difficult. You can't go see your friends and family whenever you want. You have to be in for training on weekends. It's you give up a lot of your life to play this game, and dealing with that, some people can start to struggle, I think.
I just got this like feeling of deja vu when you were describing your life as a professional athlete. I've heard the same actually for a lot of people that have been working hard throughout the COVID pandemic. For example, healthcare workers. They said, they're doing something that they love. They're saving lives, but like sometimes it gets monotonous. Sometimes the day to day really kind of becomes a grind and wears you down, and you have to kind of find a way to push through. And it sounds like that's what you do as a professional athlete, is you find a way to kind of to push through. How does working on these issues help with external pressure? Because you talked about internal pressure. So working with a psychologist helps with that internal sort of mental dialogue. What about all the external stuff like social media, people, like all the negativity and stuff? How does that help with that? How does it help with that?
Yeah, I think, as a professional, like you said, there's media, there's pundits, they're commenting on your game, commenting on expectations. And I think for me personally, a big step I took this year was trying to limit myself to social media and all that. Not letting it in my circle, in my bubble, in my thoughts. And for me, was a big component of how I was able to handle all of that as well.
So tell me more about those limits, because that's really interesting. Because as a doctor, sometimes that's what I actually prescribe to people. I tell people to, like, you know what, you actually need to take a break from social media and just get away from that stuff, because it's just endless doom scrolling. So yeah, what did limiting social media and that bubble look to you, or look like it in your case?
I think there were times where I would look up to see what people were saying about my play. So whether good or bad, I would see it. He had a terrible game, whatever, and then had a good game, I go look and be like, oh, he had a great game. So that would keep this cycle of me going back, and then I see I had a bad game, and it was just this constant up and down of me kind of taking what someone else's random thoughts were personally. And I think that made it very difficult for me to handle the ups and downs of the game that you naturally go through. When everyone's commenting, you take it more personally. And I think limiting all of that and just focusing on my own game and what my coaches thought, what my teammates thought, helped me perform better and stay at a higher level.
Yeah. I hear that a lot from folks, especially young people that are dealing with social media, body image issues, critiques on any little thing that they post, and any little perceived flaw. So it sounds like your solution to that is actually to break that cycle and to not look at it. And so do you just like go cold turkey and not look at social media at all, when you're playing, or do you take a peek once in a while? What's your pattern or habit with that?
No, for me, for a while, I did go pretty cold turkey on it.
Yeah, just flat out, not gonna look.
Deleted them on my phone, all the apps, and then, I got comfortable with it again. I brought it back up, I downloaded it again, but I wouldn't follow certain accounts, or I'd mute them. So I wouldn't see like a bunch of soccer come up. I'd see like my friends and everything. Like, try to be as normal away from the sport as possible, just to limit, because that's where, the issues came. When I would see MLS post certain things about certain players, or fan accounts post certain things or comment certain things. So I would just hide it, wouldn't come up, and I was able to enjoy the social act of the social media.
Yeah. That's awesome. Like how basically you changed your relationship with social media. So it sounds like before your relationship was more negative, right? Like it was this endless cycle of the highs and then the lows.
Right.
And then you went cold turkey. You're just like, I'm going to delete the apps, which sometimes I prescribe to my patients as well. Just delete the thing from your phone. But now you've gone back, and now it sounds like you have a healthier relationship where you're catching up with friends. You're seeing what friends are doing, right, and you're seeing the stuff that's relevant to you, but you're not like getting all the bad stuff, the negativity. Do you think, speaking of digital stuff like social media, do you think that there's ever a role for the digital world to actually help with people's mental health?
Yeah, I think, like we said before, the way, society has kind of turned the page and accepted more, people opening up about mental health and seeking help. I think social media has a way, the same way it has negative effects, it can have a positive effect. The way, if it's out there more, people are always on social media. So if they see more and more people opening up about their issues, opening up about the help they get, I think it become more positive influence on a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, I've certainly seen that too. Like, when folks like yourself talk about mental health openly, and then that gets posted to social media or that spreads digitally, like it just hits way more people than if, we didn't have digital means. Right. What about, did you always see Dr. Cox in person?
No, on our road trips, we would talk before the games. I'd phone him after a meeting during one of our team walks, and we would just talk through whatever. If I was nervous about this game, or at one point I was dealing with like a chase for the golden boot in the MLS, and that was putting self-imposed pressure on myself again, so we would talk through things like that, and just kind of clear my head, build up a bit of confidence before going into a game.
Yeah. That's so that's interesting that so sometimes you actually talk on the phone. So that's actually a relatively new thing. It used to be that old school like psychology, therapy, that kind of stuff, that mental health support was always done in person. During the pandemic, that really opened things up. People started to do phone visits more. People did video visits. I don't know if you've ever done a video visit or a digital visit like that. Do you think it, does it work? Is it a good part of that support?
Yeah, I think it's great help. For me personally, I haven't seen a therapist in person. When I was younger, I had gone when I was a little kid. But ever since COVID, everything I'd done was video chat pretty much. So for me, I think I don't really know the difference. I think it was a perfect help for me personally, just being able to talk to someone face to face.
Yeah. Well, again, just like talking openly about mental health stuff, the fact that you've done everything digitally essentially as an adult is pretty cool and is pretty normal these days. Like that's like, at TELUS Health, that's what we do basically. We do a ton of digital therapy. We support people by video. We support people on apps. And that's kind of like what people are telling us they want. They want to be able to access it wherever they are. You mentioned one of the good things about it is that when you're on the road, you can stay connected. Because otherwise, right, if you had to do it in person, you'd be disconnected from that support. What would you tell people that might be considering, getting support, either personally or professionally? Because sometimes people, actually not sometimes, I see a lot of times people hesitate. They're kind of like, do I really need this? Is this a good idea? Is this going to be boring? Is it going to help? What would you say to them?
I'd say you have to give it a try. I think there's nothing bad that can come out of it. At the end of the day, worst you come off with is a conversation with someone. If you don't feel like it's for you, then it's not for you. But I think at the worst you come out with is a conversation. You maybe can find some things that you're uncomfortable with, but maybe you don't find anything. Maybe you're pretty good mentally, but
yeah,
there's no loss. There's nothing that can hurt you. You're just gonna have a conversation with someone who can help you if they see a problem or if you feel a problem arise.
Yeah. Well, what you just shared kind of echoes my own personal experience. So I've seen a therapist before, and I remember when I was younger and did that, I just needed a few sessions and it was fine. Like you were saying, like I was mentally actually in a pretty good spot at that time. But later in life, I did see a therapist for a longer period of time, and you're right, like it's the best decision I ever made, and my only regret is kind of like waiting so long to do it. But I think I had the same like kind of concerns and misgivings as other people. Like, is this going to help? Do I have the time for this? But it turns out like when it's your health, it's kind of important that you got to put the investment in time. What more do you think could be done? Let's start with people in sport. What more could be done for mental health in sport?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I think you see more and more players coming out and clubs supporting them. I think having the support of this club for sure, I think has been huge for me personally. And I think just opening up that avenue, making it more available to the players and having them understand that what they say to the therapist or whatever sports psychologist the club has won't be reiterated to the coaching staff or the front office. And
confidentiality is very, very important. Privacy is very important.
Exactly. It's a safe space for you to clear your mind, get your thoughts, deal with any issues you're maybe going through, and knowing that if there's bigger issues, the club could be there to support you, and usually most of the time the clubs are.
Yeah. Let's dwell on that point for a bit, because that's, I think, one of the reasons why people hesitate before getting help is because they're worried that it won't be private or confidential. So in your case, like it sounds like what you say to Dr. Cox is like between you and Dr. Cox, and it doesn't go out, right? So that's really important, because in modern mental health therapy treatment, or even just when people just need support, it's really important for people to know out there that this stuff is private. It's confidential. No one's going to be sharing about this, and so it's a safe space to talk about those things. So we talked about sport, what could be done for mental health in sport. What about for the general population, just folks out there, folks that might be listening or viewing today? What do you think could be done to support their psychological well-being or mental health?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not really too familiar what it's like for, people out there in the real world who may not have the same outlets or support that a soccer club would give their players. But I think you see more and more. There's apps for what's it, mental health. There's mindfulness apps. There's more online docs that are available. I think we're becoming a society where it's much more open, much more accessible, and I think just continuing that trend of putting out outlets for people that are easily accessible would go a long way in helping society.
Yeah, I think you know way more about this issue than you're giving yourself credit for, because out there, like organizations like mine are trying to do exactly what you just said. Like take that kind of level of support that you've had here in the club and actually translate that out into the rest of the community, the rest of society. So, we provide that by providing, access to psychologists, providing access to doctors, providing access to, mental health counselors and different types of therapists, digitally and in person. So basically trying to, in a way, recreate the type of support, like personalized support that you have here in the club, but for folks that are like working in their job or going to school or, dealing with their family, so that everyone can have that mental health support. I'm gonna close with this question for you. If there was one thing that you could tell people out there about mental health, what would it be?
One thing. I think I've heard this before. It's okay to not be okay. I think it's something that may become more of a slogan that's become more popular for sure. I think, everyone deals with things. Life is full of ups and downs, ebbs and flows, highs and lows, and it's important to know that everyone goes through it and that everyone has tough times, but there's outlets in this world now. It's more accessible, more acceptable to not be okay and to reach out for help and to not be afraid of it.
Amazing. I think actually that's a great point to end on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For spending the time with me. I'm Dr. Matthew Chow from TELUS Health, and it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure today to interview you, Brian, and learn more about your experience with mental health and your message to people around that it's okay to not be okay.